I, 33 male, was married to my ex-wife, Emily, who was 27 as of the time we got married. When I met Emily, I was working as a contractor for a new construction site I was working at, and Emily just happened to live in one of the houses close to the site. The first few days after I started working there, I didn't notice Emily because I was too engrossed with the job, but after other guys at the site started talking about her, that's when I noticed her. I think the thing that really stood out about her was her beautiful smile, her golden yellow hair, and her honey brown eyes that made me go crazy whenever she stood in the sun. At that time, she worked as a teacher for one of the schools in the city, so I mostly saw her whenever she returned. Emily and I became friends, and we began to hang out more. I got to know her better, and we fell in love. I found out that she was not just beautiful on the outside, but she was beautiful within too. She was kind, and I think that had to do with the fact that she dealt with children. When our relationship moved further, she eventually met my parents, and I met hers too in about a year, and some months later we got married. I still remember our wedding day like it was yesterday, but it hurts me so much that I have to let that memory go. After Emily and I got married, she moved into my apartment, and we began to live like a couple. She did not want to move in while we were dating because her parents were a bit religious, and it was against their rules or something for an unmarried man and woman to live together, so I didn't have an issue with that. The first few months of our marriage were blissful. Emily was great in bed. She took good care of the house, and me, and I helped out too. At that moment after we got married, my job demanded my attention. I could go to a construction site for a whole week, and the next week I would just have one day to myself. Emily, on the other hand, really enjoyed the breaks and long summer breaks from school, and whenever she was at home, I just wished I could spend more time with her. Luckily for me, the same week her school break began, we had completed the work on the site I was working on, and coincidentally, I was due for my leave. This was great news for me because I didn't get to spend the kind of quality time I wanted with her, and thankfully we were both going to spend time together. Out of excitement, I bought 2 tickets for us to go somewhere fun and spend 1 week away from home, and Emily was so excited. It was going to be a mini vacation for the both of us. 2 days later, we traveled and things were beginning to fall into place. Emily made a list of things we were going to do during the whole week, and one of them included taking pictures at a very popular place in the city we visited. It was in the process of taking pictures that I discovered something very shocking about my wife. She had given me her phone to take pictures of her, and at the same moment she did, a notification from a dating app popped up, and it read, "Emily, you have a message from Isaac." I took a couple of pictures of her, cleared the notification, and returned her phone. I took note of the name of the dating app, and I wrote it on my phone so I would not forget. You should know that by this time we were married for 2 years plus, and we had almost been together for 4 years, so the last place I expected Emily to be was a dating app. Finding this out ruined the rest of our vacation, as I had to cook up a lie and say that my company needed me back, and they promised to make up for it. When we returned, I found a way to get her phone, take screenshots of her conversation with the guy, and I sent them directly to myself on WhatsApp, and then I deleted every trace on both ends. After I did this, I told her we could go and visit her parents because it had been long, and she agreed. At her parents' house, we were all in the living room when I handed prints out of her conversation with her lover on the dating app to every member of her family, including Emily herself. I told them it was a project I was working on, and I needed their opinions on it. When Emily recognized the conversation, she was shocked and began to cry when she knew that I knew. She said she did it because I was barely home, and she needed a companion, and the guy always returned to her messages fast, unlike me. Well, in the end, her parents disowned her, and they were so disappointed in her. That wasn't all. The AP she was cheating on me with also left her when he found out she was going through a divorce. Emily believed he loved her, but he was only there for the sex, and after he got it, he left. In the end, Emily suffered alone. She lost both me and her family. She tried to come back to me twice, but I promised her the next time she tried it, she'd be resting in jail. OP, I am sorry to hear Emily treated you that way. It's quite surprising that she chose to cheat on you while you were away trying to make ends meet. Women can be a handful sometimes, and they can do the most unimaginable things. She broke your trust because of some random dude she met online because he responded to her faster, which is crazy. It's a good thing you gave her a taste of her own medicine. Now she'll also know what it feels like to disappoint someone, and her family did right by disowning her. It's sad that she took your love for granted and decided to ruin what you both shared. Thank you for sharing your story with us, and I am happy you have nothing to do with her anymore. Now, let's move on to the next story for today. My wife and I started dating right after college. She was 24, and I was 26. Taylor and I happened to come from the same state, and I just can't explain how but I loved her. I loved everything about Taylor, and her family was quite fond of me. Aside from my mom, who was very important in my life, Taylor was the next most important person, and to be honest, I loved her more than my best friend, Rick. I know it was unfair to say that, especially since Rick had always been a part of my life since childhood, but what I had for Taylor was just amazing, and I believe she loved me too, but the rest of my story is messy. After Taylor and I dated for about a year, we got married. She always wanted a beach wedding, so we had a simple wedding, and Rick was my best man. Taylor and Rick got along very well. There was no reason for her not to. In fact, I used to jokingly tell her that if anything bad happened to me, she had Rick to fall back on because I trusted him with my life and with my wife. I worked with a pharmaceutical company, and I'd love to say that it was raining money for me. Our products were well known, and it was selling well, and because I had been working part-time with them while I was in college after college, I was able to grow to a top position that came with great pay. Rick was a doctor. It was both of our childhood dreams to be in the medical field. I wanted to work where the medications were made, and Rick always wanted to be a doctor. I don't really get how, but in some way I earned more than he did, and I was able to provide everything that Taylor wanted. If she wanted vacations, trips, expensive shopping, or anything she mentioned, it was all hers. Most of the time, I just dropped by a jewelry shop and get her some expensive jewelry just so she could smile ear to ear. I loved Taylor that much, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I was ready to do anything for her, but I guess that was not what Taylor wanted. Rick knew how much I valued Taylor, right from our dating days up till when we were married. Taylor also knew that I didn't have so many people in my life. It was just me and Rick from the beginning until she came along, yet the two of them chose to treat me in the most horrible way. In the beginning, I didn't suspect there was anything going on between Rick and my ex-wife. They were close because of the bond we all shared, so whatever was going on, I believed it was just them being friends. Taylor and Rick's wife were equally close, but it was still nothing compared to the closeness between Rick and Taylor. I just used to believe it was because Rick's wife came late to the picture, and Taylor was already fond of him. It didn't really make sense until one night, while Taylor and I were making love, she unconsciously said, "Go easy on me, Rick." And when she realized what she had said, she pretended it was a slip of tongue. I was too smart, and there was no way I was buying that crap. If she called another man's name while I was trying to make love to her, then it only meant one thing: she had been screwing him behind my back. I got up immediately and asked her to explain what she had just said. And as crazy as it sounds, my guts were right. Taylor had cheated on me with Rick, and it had been going on for the past months, and I barely noticed a thing. She said it all began when I traveled one time for a very important meeting, and I asked Rick to look after her for me. When Rick came over and the conversation led to another, she didn't know how it happened. The more she told the story, the more irritated I was. I could not believe that my wife would stoop so low to sleep with my best friend, and my best friend on the other hand found my wife attractive. We were only married for 2 years, and we were still very young in our marriage. I had noticed Rick and my wife had become closer after I returned from my 4-day meeting, but I didn't think it had anything to do with them sleeping together. I was so broken, and for the first time in a long time I cried. That was the highest form of betrayal I had ever experienced. I confronted Rick about it, and after so much back and forth, he affirmed that he was having an affair with Taylor, and it was the devil's work. Rick's betrayal was the worst. He would never have forgiven me if I had anything to do with his wife, but he repeatedly slept with my wife, and she allowed it. I noticed she had become colder towards me. Every conversation was always about Rick, and if I tried to change the topic, she would find a way of bringing him back into it. I knew that if I kept any of those too close to me, they could lead to my death, so I cut both of them out of my life without thinking twice. I divorced Taylor, I was better off without her, and I moved out of town. When Rick's wife found out what he had done, she divorced him too, and I was thinking he would end up with Taylor, but he didn't. He cheated on her with another woman just a month after his divorce, and he could not sustain the kind of lifestyle I gave to Taylor. It's been 3 years since this happened, and I have been happier with the two of them out of my life. Taylor tried to call me twice. She cried bitterly and admitted that she fully regrets what happened, and she promised it would never happen again, but I couldn't just take her back. Up till now, I still feel the hurt and heartbreak, and maybe if she did not call Rick's name in bed, maybe we would still be together, and they would still be cheating on me, but as painful as it was, I'm glad it happened. OP. I can't imagine what it feels like to be betrayed by your wife and best friend. That must really hurt. I'm happy you cut them out of your life completely, because if the two most important people in your life could break your trust and treat you in that way, then they can bring harm to you. I also know that there are no words I can say that will make you feel better, but I admire your strength and courage. It was wicked of Taylor and your best friend to do that to you. I know you loved her, and you only wanted to make her happy, but she took that trust and broke it. I know it's tough, but you're going to be fine. You just need to take your time to heal properly, and love yourself too. Never neglect self-love. I hope you're doing better now, and thank you for sharing your story with us. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care, and thank my wife 35 and I 40 met at a single parents group. She had a 6-year-old daughter and I had my 9-year-old son. We hit it off instantly and pretty much agreed that very day that we wanted to try this out. It went extremely well and our kids became friends. They'd argue a little but quickly forgive and go back to playing. We got married, and early on my wife's routine was to take the kids to the park while I was at work in the print shop. Since we lived in New York City, we had GPS trackers activated on our phones. It offered some peace of mind. I didn't check it every day. I mostly just took my wife's word for it when she said she was going to the park or shopping. I checked more often when this routine began, but then I learned to have faith everything would be fine. After a few years, my wife suddenly started coming home with more stuff, but the money wasn't leaving our account. It took me a while to notice this, and when I finally asked my wife about it, her answer seemed rehearsed. She said she's an excellent bargain shopper and I don't need to worry about her wasting the money I earn. I thought this was nice to hear and pretty much let it go. We went out to dinner one night with the kids and I tried to pay the bill while my wife was in the bathroom. I realized I left my card in different pants, so I looked in her wallet for the bank card to the account we shared. Instead, I found a bank card with AP's name on it. I took a picture with my phone while the waiter stared at me like I was crazy. Then AP paid for dinner. I wasn't sure how to bring this up with my wife and I wanted her to admit the truth without trying to lie. I had to catch her red-handed. I left work to find her at the Goose location on 5th Avenue. I spotted her with AP and the kids sitting at a table eating lunch. There was a third child I assumed was AP's. I was extremely devastated. Breathing was a struggle because I was seeing the woman I loved with another man and her kids behind my back. They held hands, kissed, and appeared to be married. I wondered why my son didn't tell me this was happening. I recorded them as I approached and told my wife that I just caught her kissing another man. Her expression looked like her soul left her body. She couldn't believe I was standing there recording. She asked in a daze how I found her. I told her never mind and took my son with me. As I walked away, I told her not to return to the apartment again. Her daughter started crying and called me daddy, which broke my heart. That's when my wife started crying and I realized strangers had stopped to watch what was happening. When I got home, I watched the video I recorded again and heard something I didn't hear at the moment. My wife told me AP's wife just died, as if that was a reason for her to be kissing and spending time with him. I had the guy's name off his bank card, so I looked him up. I easily found him, but no record of his deceased wife. He had an angry ex-wife that posted things relating to emotional support after discovering spousal infidelity and divorce. I decided to post the video confrontation on AP's profile. Later that night, my wife returned home completely ashamed. She begged me to forgive her because she had no idea AP was lying to her and she doesn't trust him anymore. I just laughed and told her she must be able to see she's doing the same thing to me that AP did to her. He lied, she lied, he cheated, she cheated, they deserve each other. She looked sick while she explained that AP also hid the fact that he was staying in another woman's home. She admitted he had her over there, but only when the lady was gone. He never intended to let her or her daughter move in with him, and she didn't expect to since she never wanted to leave me. It turns out they met at the park 7 months ago and continued meeting up ever since. She thought it was harmless to start a meaningless relationship with this man if it only helped him get through a loss and benefited our marriage. She begged me not to make her leave. I told her to get her stuff and get out. I added that if she learned anything from this, she would never cheat on anyone ever again. She cried as she packed and asked me where she was supposed to go. I shrugged and suggested her parents' house. Her daughter was super upset about having to leave. She didn't want to get any of her things and she said she wanted to live with me. I think this helped my wife to really understand how badly she messed up. She broke apart our family and caused our kids to have to go through this too. Months later, our stuff is officially divided between my place and her parents. She's just taken several steps backward in life with nothing to show for the last 10 years except a daughter from a previous relationship. We tried to come together and live like a family should, but it wasn't enough for her, and she made the terrible decision to let another man love her all while pretending to be my wife and living in my apartment. As hard as this was, I know I can find a real woman that remains honest and loving toward me by choice because it's what she wants to do. There's never a qualifying reason for a spouse to start a secret relationship with the opposite sex. She might have justified it at first by saying they were just friends, but that's how all relationships start, and if he was lying about his wife dying to make himself appear desperate for love, it's clear he expected more from the beginning. She also brought the children into it, which is always a terrible complication. Her daughter was apparently very attached to you, and she'll have a hard time forgiving her mom for ruining a loving and happy situation. It's shocking to me that she thought this would be harmless, but she probably just said that because she was caught and never expected to be. Thank goodness you found a clue and followed her that day. Thank you for sharing your story. Let's now get into our second story for today. My wife was raised by a single parent who struggled financially and would find unstable living situations at best. Her small family was resentful towards her because she was labeled as an unexpected burden. When we fell in love as young adults, she was so relieved to have found me. After just 9 months of dating, I wanted her to move in with me into my nice house just 13 minutes from the beach. This was because I saw the living conditions she endured. She made it her goal to keep our home cheery, hopeful, and organized. Things she never got to grow up with. She had a talent for knitting and started making money with an online store after just a few months of living together. She proved to me that she had ambition and hope for our future. I loved how she always had the dishes clean, clothes hung, and floor swept before I got home. She even packed my lunches in advance so I wouldn't have to spend money on fast food. Suddenly, just as quickly as she proved herself, my girlfriend started to change. She became irritated with everything I did or didn't do. Whenever I went to the bathroom, she complained that the whole house smelled and sprayed Febreze excessively. When I sneezed, burped, spoke, or breathed, she'd roll her eyes. I continued trying to be as sweet as possible, but I did start asking her to do the laundry, dishes, and pack my lunch. I needed her help and support as my girlfriend and roommate. After my request, she started doing the dishes as loudly as possible when I was home and leaving my clothes bundled up in the basket. She didn't even try to pack me lunches. The last straw for me was when we stopped having sex. I planned to confront her one day after work. I got a rude text from her and rolled my eyes before going back to work, so I missed her call. It was a butt dial, and she unintentionally left a very long voicemail. I could hear her talking to someone among other weird noises, so I went home right away. I found her making out with another man in my living room. Even though she completely changed, I never suspected her of having someone else at the house. They noticed me but didn't move or say anything. I felt completely powerless and stupid for not kicking her out sooner. I just shut the door and left. She actually opened the door and asked if we could talk about it. I ignored her but figured out what was likely going through her head. She knew if I kicked her out, she'd be homeless, so even though she just randomly decided to hate and cheat on me, she couldn't give up the only place she had to live. I told my good friend everything that was happening and arranged to stay with him until I could get her out of my house. She got me on the phone and actually tried to say she should be forgiven since I was the one that got distant, stopped having sex, and demanded too much from her. I told her she was crazy for thinking that way and her brainwashing wouldn't work on me. I told her I only ever treated her as best as I could, so I expected the same in return, but instead she turned into a bitter, hateful roommate. She disagreed and wished me luck getting her to leave the house because she believed it was hers now. I have no idea why she thought that because my name was on it. It was nearly paid off since I took over the payments after my parents died. It only took about 2 weeks to get her out of there, but by then she destroyed the place. She wrote with markers on the walls, stabbed the furniture, and broke all the dishes. I was able to take her to court for the damages. All the while I was just so relieved that she showed her true colors quickly into the relationship. I was thankful she didn't try to hurt me and that I got her out of my life and house. I cheerfully fixed up the house with a grateful spirit and ended up selling it for profit. I bought a different house close to the beach, carrying on with my life while my ex left me bitter, hateful voicemails almost every day on different phone numbers. She was having a hard time moving on, but that's just what she deserves. I am so glad I didn't have children with this girl because she has a lot of growing up to do. She doesn't know what's required in a mature, stable relationship. Since all this happened, I've gotten married and bought a second rental property thanks to my wonderful wife's help. I wanted to share this terrible story so that anyone else going through something like this knows that they do not need to stay with someone that starts treating them poorly. There's no excuse for it, and living in an environment like that is terrible for anyone's well-being. I am so sorry you had to endure this betrayal from a girl that seemed so kind and genuine at first. She probably thought she had what it took to be in a stable relationship, but it was the security of a home that she craved. When she didn't know how to compromise and get along with her new partner, she just started to pull away and act with resentment. That doesn't get anyone anywhere. Thankfully, you didn't stand for this very long and went home after receiving the odd voicemail. Even though she was a terrible mistake, there was no way you would have known until you tried, and she taught you some valuable lessons. I'm sure after handling this and getting her out of your life, you've become stronger and more prepared for the future. Each step you took was exactly what someone should do when they're being cheated on or mistreated. Continue treating your spouse kindly while you try to talk about what's going on, and most importantly, if it doesn't work, take action. Sign up for couples counseling or separate from an unwilling partner. I wish you the best of luck and happiness in life. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mark. I hope you all are having a fantastic day or evening. In today's story, OP found out his wife cheated on him with her boss after he saw some crazy texts of what they did in his car. The OP is planning on getting revenge by exposing the affair to everyone. Now let's get into today's story to find out what happened. We were a couple of 4 years in our early 30s, living together with no children. There were some issues with sex and intimacy. I wanted her to go to therapy because she was struggling with her emotions and speaking about them, but she was too scared. The last time we kissed was in July and she just wasn't there. From that moment, her attitude changed. She became distant and impatient. 2 weeks later, we had a night out with friends after work and she brought her boss along. That was the first time I met the guy, and he told me that I seemed friendly, but we were playing on 2 teams because he fancied my GF. When I spoke to my GF about it, she acted surprised and assured me nothing was going on. She became even more distant and hostile. I tried to get through to her, but she would get angry and gaslight me, claiming I was imagining things. I decided to make more effort and take her out more often, but her mind was always somewhere else. Then on our holiday trip, she told me that she didn't feel anything the last time we kissed and that there was no desire for me, but it didn't mean she wanted to break up. We decided to continue the conversation after the trip. When we got back, I noticed she became glued to her phone. She did more activities not involving me. I was still in denial. One Friday, she texted me that she was going for a beer with her boss. When confronted, she only said, "You want me to ask for permission? It was just a beer." She broke up with me 2 days later. I said that I felt like we could work through our issues with couples therapy and if she went to therapy herself. She started having doubts about the breakup and said she would look for a therapist. When I asked if she met someone, she admitted to texting her boss a lot. He was hitting on her and it boosted her ego. He'd also invited her to join him on his holiday in Croatia in October. She wasn't planning to go. I was angry, but believed her. When emotions settled the next day, I felt like that story just didn't add up. So I checked her messenger and it turned out to be a full-blown affair. She detailed everything to her two closest friends. It lasted a month. They kissed each other a few times and went on numerous dates. They agreed he would follow her lead and she would set the boundaries. She considered it might be just a temporary crush but wanted to see where it lead. Dates and kisses were initiated by her. She said to her friends that it would be a shame if they didn't have sex. She was seriously considering going with him on that trip. They were making out in his car outside her flat and at work. She bragged to her friends that she finally got a romance at work type of story and how exciting it was. My view of her shattered. In the conversations, she acted like a teenager having the first crush in her life. They had a date planned on the day my aunt died and she complained to her friend she had to cancel because of that. I even helped her buy him a gift on our trip which was supposed to be for her friend. It hurt like hell. And man, her friends disgusted me. They cheered her on telling things like, "I envy you and the butterflies in your stomach. Take what you can from this and don't tell your boyfriend." One of them even offered to cover for her so she could go to Croatia with him. They never mentioned that it was wrong and she could lose her job. I also saw live how she wrote to her friends that the breakup with me was probably a big mistake and that we would most likely get together soon, but she needed therapy to figure things out. She also set up a meeting with her boss 4 days after our breakup. I was never cheated on and I thought that physical stuff would hurt the most, but wow, was I wrong. It was the lies and manipulations and how easy it was for her. The cruelty of stuff she did and said. I wanted to believe she was lost. The decision to go to therapy seemed genuine, but so much of the stuff I read seemed calculated. On the evening of D-Day, she was in tears and asked if we could talk because she felt like the breakup was a huge mistake. I said we could talk in 2 days. I needed time to gather my thoughts and see my therapist first. I also wanted to get all things out of her apartment before that. Part of me still loved her and hoped she will want to change and fight for us, but deep down I knew there was no going back from some of this shit. It will stay in my head forever. I didn't think she was all evil, but now I discovered a part of her that was disgusting. I wanted to know why, and I hoped that when the whole thing was uncovered she would offer me the truth, since it would be most likely the last time we would ever speak. When we finally met, she said how she wasn't sure about her feelings and what she wanted. That she needed time to figure it out with the therapist. I straight up told her I read all her texts. I asked why she didn't tell me when I gave her so many chances, and she said not to hurt you and because I was ashamed. It was a rationalization, of course, which made me angry. She was supposed to confess after we would get back together. I of course said it was bullshit because she knew I wouldn't want to fix stuff after that. Questions about details made her at times. She tried to lessen the whole thing. She explained that she felt wanted and finally something was happening, but it wasn't worth it in the end. She claimed she didn't really mean some of the stuff she wrote. She didn't want to have sex with him or go on that trip. She wasn't even sure if she liked him. I asked why would I believe her and not my eyes, and she said that she didn't know why she wrote that stuff and felt ashamed. She also said it was her biggest mistake in life and that she felt like trash for hurting me and regretted not going to therapy sooner and that I deserved someone better. I agreed. She apologized. I asked how she could be so dumb as to risk her job, and she said that it was not my problem anymore. She told me that she set up a meeting with him on Friday to ask him for a break to figure out what she wanted. I saw misery on her face. I said that I felt extremely disappointed and I didn't know who she was anymore. She replied that she didn't know either, but was determined to find out during her therapy. When I asked about us, she said it was most likely unfixable. I finished by saying that I didn't know if I would ever forgive her and hope she found the answers that she sought during her therapy. Then I left. It was the hardest conversation in my life. In the end, I didn't receive the answers I wanted, and what I did receive was disappointing and insincere. It hurt me that she wasn't honest even when I confronted her. I'm angry at myself that I hope she would want to fix it, and I still catch myself having these thoughts even after a week. This is naive and I know that. I want to be loved by someone who hurt me so much it's so dumb. I hope these thoughts will go away sooner rather than later. I know I should focus on myself and improve my life, but it's so difficult to move on. I'm angry and jealous that the affair is most likely still going and she enjoys her time with someone else when the corpse of our relationship is still fresh and I'm suffering. Dealing with losing your home and your partner and the feeling of betrayal is overwhelming at times. A ton of you suggested I should report the affair to HR at her company and also blow it up to all her friends and family. I understand the reasoning and I've already spoken to my therapist about it. She told me that I should consider whether such an action would actually help me or just add to my misery. I've decided that I will do that because it will help me heal from what she's put me through. I want to heal and it's the best thing I can do at the moment. I feel better when I don't think about her. I plan on also telling her parents and close mutual friends so she doesn't try to spin the narrative on what happened. Hey OP. She is a product of the environment that she surrounds herself with. She chooses to be around shitty human beings, ergo she becomes a shitty human being. Therapy won't change her until she improves her environment. As long as she continues to surround herself with poor influences, the same things will happen. Her relationship with her boss won't last. He'll get what he wants from her and then move on to a fresh target. I just want to say that with time you will become a lot stronger because of this. You will know the signs early and you'll be far less likely to put up with it as long. Moreover, she's broken. What they say about affairs and it being on the person who had it is completely true. Whether it be a perceived flaw that you have or nothing at all, it doesn't change the fact that she went out and did what she did instead of communicating like an adult. That's on her. She's gonna have to forever live with the fact that she hurt somebody that cared about her, and not only are her reasonings shallow and materialistic, but both of them will be miserable before long. It's a relationship that's built like House of Cards. She will never be able to trust him because like who would date somebody that's already in a relationship knowingly, and he will never be able to trust her for precisely the same reason. I wish you the best of luck OP. Now let's get into today's second story. Guys and gals, I'm not doing so well. I'm gonna try and keep things as brief as possible because I'm on my phone. I never thought I would ask this, but I need some support. Even if you all are just internet strangers, you are all that I have. Background. My wife, 27 female, and I, 25 male, have been married for over 5 years and have been together for more than 7. We have 2 beautiful little ones together. She is a full-time student. I work full-time. I make enough money for us to pay the bills and eat, but not much more. Our relationship has had its ups and downs. Some points were pretty rough. We separated twice, but we always worked it out and learned from our mistakes and grew together. Situation. My wife and went to town today to run errands. Was not fun. We brought the kids and it was just one thing after the other that kept starting fights for no reason. She started saying some pretty hurtful things, and granted I'm sure what I was saying probably passed her off too, but I told her I was only trying to communicate about the issue so that we could just address it and be done with it, but she just kept telling me to be silent and not talk to her. When we got home it was around 9 p.m. We got the kids inside and she was in the bedroom getting dressed up. When I confronted her about why she was putting on heels and perfume, she said, "I'm gonna get dry shampoo." This was obviously a red flag and all, but I wanted to trust her, and she has done this before where she really does go get what she needs and then comes back. As she was leaving, I was still just like, "Let me come with you, your sister can watch the kids for us. She's living with us temporarily." She refused and then drove off. So I do what any doting dad does and I got the kids to sleep. Well, I was also watching the bank account to see if she was being truthful with me. 30 minutes later, I saw a charge at the place she was going and I was thinking, okay, everything's good, right? I was just overthinking things. She loves me, right? Yeah, well, several hours passed by and I hadn't so much as heard from her. I was starting to worry, so I texted and called, but I got a notification that I'd been blocked by her. I owned the phones. I was thinking, wait, what happened? Was she okay? Well, as time passed and passed, I was staying awake thinking in my head about every single thing that could be happening while I awaited her coming home. The thought crossed my mind that maybe she could be cheating on me, but I refused to believe that and continued to give the benefit of the doubt. Here's where it got real. Around 5 a.m., she came into the house trying to be quiet and putting some groceries away. She thought I was asleep. She put her phone on the counter and I grabbed it and snuck into the bedroom while she was distracted, and on her Snapchat I found a message she had sent to some guy thanking him for a wonderful night. As she came into the bedroom, I confronted her with an emotional tone of, "I was worried about you and God so help me, you better start explaining." Well, when she looked up at me, I saw her lipstick smeared all over her face. Her eyeshadow was smeared and her makeup in general just looks disheveled. Her hair was frizzy, almost like she ran home or something, and her breath from 4 feet away reeked of alcohol. I was destroyed. 7 years of time, energy, money, and love just washed down the drain as my heart fell to my feet. Thoughts of the other guy and what happened ran through my mind. I got pissed and broke her phone right in front of her as I called her out on the bullshit, and you know what she had to say about it? That I was delusional and needed help. That she didn't cheat on me. I continued to go off on her, hoping to get some kind of emotional response from her that would indicate remorse, but none was shown. I'm at a loss. I can't understand this. Am I being delusional here? Is she right about me? Can all of that stuff be explained rationally? Even if it can, I don't know how to move forward because I can't afford a divorce. I married this woman because I thought she and I were going to build a life together for us and our family. Chase our dreams and all that shit. Who does this to someone? Like, really, no matter how much you fight or argue or things go stale, how do you just throw everything away for one night? How is that worth it? I just need support, guys. Advice is appreciated too. Obviously, if she really did cheat on me, I'm gonna have to get divorced. I can put up with a lot of shit, but I can't deal with betrayal. I really don't even believe in divorce because of my religious beliefs, but like I said, betrayal is something I can't do. Are there any Christians in here who are also willing to advise? All support is welcomed. Thank you. Hey OP, I do not understand why religious people state their religion for staying with a cheater. She is gaslighting you. You don't come home at 5 a.m. all disheveled with a thank you for the great evening if nothing happened. This guy is probably a coworker. My heart goes out to you. There is a lot of pain coming your way, whatever you chose to do. See a lawyer as soon as possible to see where you stand and take his advice. Search for and read up on the 180 and gray rock methods. Implement them immediately. Act as indifferent towards your wife as you can. She will notice. You will notice that she starts acting more attentive. She starts seeming bothered by your lack of attention, by your lack of doing things for her around the house. This will further confirm to you that she is likely cheating. She wants to have her cake and eat it too. Don't let her have that. Good luck, OP. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed the stories, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on today's stories. My wife and I got married 3 years ago. It was love at first sight. She was the girl of my dreams. We started dating and were so in love that everything seemed unreal. Fast forward a few months. I proposed to her and we married. I was head over heels in love with her, and our life seemed perfect until I was promoted. We were super excited because we could afford a better lifestyle, but we knew a long-distance relationship would be hard. I was promoted to a senior position at work and had to move to California for a few months. I asked my wife to come along, but she insisted on staying in New York as she had worked here. I understood her career was as important as mine, so I didn't force her. My wife was fond of flowers, and I brought fresh flowers daily to put in the kitchen. When I moved to California, I had an idea. To make her feel special, I decided to send her flowers every day. I contacted the florist shop I used to buy the flowers from and ordered flowers for her. I instructed him to deliver her flowers every morning. The first day when the flowers were delivered, my wife FaceTimed me. She was overjoyed. I was relieved to see her happy. I sent her different flowers every day. In the beginning, we used to text all day, but slowly she started getting busier. I understood that she might be busy at work. Still, we FaceTimed every day. I got a week off from work because it was our anniversary, booked a flight, and came to New York. I couldn't wait to see her. When I came home, I expected my wife to be happy, but she seemed irritated. When I asked her if everything was okay, she told me that work had been challenging recently. I tried to calm her down, but she brushed me off. That night, she slept early. It was our first night after months, and I was looking forward to some intimacy. I was a bit upset, but I thought that she might need a little space as she is struggling with work. I was getting bored, so I decided to watch some television. I couldn't find the remote, so I checked her drawer. I was shocked to see that there were condoms in her drawer. My wife suddenly woke up, saw the condoms in my hand, and her face turned pale. She said that she planned a surprise for me. This is why she got condoms beforehand, but she was a little tired, so she slept. I wasn't suspicious, but a little confused as the condoms weren't my size, and we weren't using protection for a few years. My wife suddenly started touching me seductively, and we had sex that night. I forgot about the whole condom thing. The next day, my wife was again a bit irritated. She kept her distance from me. I wanted to do something exciting for our anniversary, so I took her to watch her favorite movie and then went to dinner. I then took her to the florist's shop. She started acting weird when we came to the shop. I told her that she could buy any flowers she wanted. She told the florist that John could make a bouquet of baby breaths and roses. It was a bit weird that my wife knew the florist's name, because she said that she never came here. This thing was itching me at the back of my head. When we drove home, I finally asked her how she knew his name, even though she had never visited his shop. My wife was hesitant before speaking, which made me a little suspicious. She said that one day John came to deliver the flowers. This is how she knows his name. I believed her because there was nothing suspicious about this. The next morning when I woke up, my wife had already left for work. I decided to do the home chores today as she worked hard. I did all the dishes, made lunch for us, and then went to do laundry. There was a lot of laundry piled up. My wife has never been the person who liked doing home chores. I started picking up everything and tossed it in the washing machine when suddenly an underwear fell on my feet. I wondered what my underwear was doing in the laundry as I picked it up, but I was shocked to see it wasn't my underwear. It was an XXL while I wore a large. It all made sense right now. The XL-sized condoms and XXL underwear. Someone else has been in my house. At first I thought I should ask my wife what was happening, but then I realized that she would lie and come up with another explanation. So I decided to catch her red-handed. My wife came back home in a good mood. I played along with her. We made love that night. The next morning my wife went back to work. I went to a tech shop and bought a tiny camera. I placed the camera on the bookshelf because I knew she wouldn't notice it. I then connected the camera to my phone. I went back to California. When I arrived at my apartment, I checked my phone and was shocked to see that my wife was having sex with a man in her bedroom. It had hardly been 12 hours and she was already with another man. It made me furious. I was fuming with anger. The guy's face came into view and I was shocked to see that it was the florist John. My wife was fucking the man I hired to send her flowers for months. I couldn't take it anymore and I didn't want a confession. I wanted revenge. A few weeks passed and I was still plotting what to do when I logged into the app to see what my wife was doing. I saw her coming out of them with something in her hand. I couldn't see what it was. She sat on the bed and I saw what was in her hand. It was a pregnancy strip. She began to cry and my heart thudded to know what it was. We had been suffering to get pregnant for years now. I suddenly realized that I had given some fertility tests and the results were to be emailed last week. In between my wife's cheating drama, I forgot about my tests. I quickly opened my email and checked the report. My heart skipped a beat when I read it. The report said that I was infertile and could never have babies. I wondered what the test said. Is she crying because she isn't pregnant, or is she crying because she is pregnant? I was confused. I opened the app again and saw her talking to someone over the phone. She began shouting and threw her phone away. She fell on the floor crying. A few days passed and I kept checking what she was doing. John didn't visit her again. It was clear now that they had broken up. In a couple of days, I got a call from my wife. She sounded so excited and said that she had good news for me. I knew exactly what she was going to say. She told me she was pregnant. I was going to confront her, but I had an idea. I knew exactly what my revenge would be. I told her she no longer needed to work and should rest at home. She wanted to come to California, but I convinced her that it was important for her to be with family. I kept paying her for her expenses and bills from her joint account and took out all my money from it. I was paying her with her own money and she didn't notice. The second trimester passed and it was time for my revenge. I went to New York for the baby shower. After the gender of the baby was revealed by my sister-in-law, I told everyone that I had a surprise video for everyone. Everybody gathered and I switched on the projector. Everyone gasped as soon as the video turned on and my wife's moans filled the room. Now everybody could see how she cheated on me. My wife's face went pale. Before she could say anything, I threw my fertility report in her face. Her eyes popped out as she read the report. I told her that it wasn't clearly my baby and I had filed for divorce. My wife pleaded with me not to leave. She cried about how sorry she was, but I didn't listen to a word she said. My revenge was complete. She couldn't abort the baby now. Everybody knew that she was a cheater. She left her job and she had no money in her joint account. The rage in me finally cooled down after months. I have taught my cheating wife a lesson that she will never forget. I finally moved back to New York. One day my sister-in-law Lizzie came to my place. I thought that she had come to convince me to forgive her sister, but I was shocked by what she told me. My sister-in-law said to me that my wife had been cheating on me before we married. She confessed that she saw my wife flirting with one of my groomsmen during the wedding. She didn't tell me this before because she was scared and because she thought I wouldn't believe her. I was devastated. I doubted if our love was ever real. Lizzie told me that my wife worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, but because she was pregnant she couldn't go to work regularly and was fired. She had no money on her and was broke. My ex-wife is now living in a crappy apartment doing 2 jobs a day to take care of the baby. At the end of the day, I'm glad she's no longer my problem and have since moved on, even though it is hard. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me.